You've been told your whole life that buying a house is the smartest thing you can do with your money. Your parents said it, your bank said it, society said it so many times, so consistently, for so long that most people stopped questioning it entirely. It became gospel. It became identity. It became the invisible finish line that an entire generation of middle-class families oriented their entire financial lives around reaching. But here's the question nobody asks out loud. What if they were wrong? Not partially wrong, not wrong in a few edge cases. What if the single most celebrated financial decision in modern history, buying a home, has quietly been one of the most effective mechanisms for keeping ordinary people from building real wealth? What if the house wasn't the destination? What if it was the trap? This isn't a video telling you not to buy a house. This is a video about something more uncomfortable than that. It's about the math nobody shows you before you sign, the psychology nobody explains before you commit, the invisible cost that doesn't appear on any mortgage document but shows up slowly in your life in the form of opportunity you never took, flexibility you sacrificed, and capital that sat locked inside four walls for 30 years while the world moved on without it. You are 28 years old, maybe 26, maybe 32. The exact age doesn't matter. What matters is that you are standing at a crossroads that most people don't even realize is a crossroads. You've been saving, you've been responsible, and now everyone around you, family, coworkers, Instagram, is telling you it's time. Buy the house. Stop throwing money away on rent. That phrase, throwing money away on rent. You've heard it so many times, it feels like a law of physics, like gravity, like something that simply cannot be argued with. But think about it for one moment with fresh eyes. When you pay rent, you receive something in return. A place to live, no maintenance costs, no property tax, no HOA fees, no insurance beyond your personal belongings, zero exposure to a falling market, and complete geographic freedom. You are paying for a service. That is not throwing money away. That is a transaction. When you buy a house, you also receive something in return. But the full list of what you're paying for is never shown to you at once. Let's run the numbers honestly. The median home price in the United States in 2024 was approximately $420,000. To buy that home, you need a down payment of $84,000. That's 20%, which is the standard recommendation to avoid private mortgage insurance at a 7% fixed interest rate over 30 years. Your monthly mortgage payment is approximately $2,237. That's just principal and interest. Now add property taxes, national average, around $300 per month. Homeowners insurance, $150 per month. Maintenance and repairs. Financial planners universally recommend budgeting 1% of home value per year. So $4,200 annually or $350 per month. HOA fees, if applicable. Utilities that are now entirely your responsibility. Your actual monthly cost to own that $420,000 home is closer to $3,000 to $3,500 per month, not $2,237. Now here's what most people never ask. What if instead of putting $84,000 into a down payment, you'd invested that money? The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% per year over the past 50 years. If you invested $84,000 at age 28 and added nothing else, in 30 years, that single investment would be worth approximately $1,470,000. That $84,000 didn't just sit there. It compounded. It grew. It crossed thresholds. It crossed $100,000, then $200,000, then $500,000. And it did that while you slept, while you worked, while you moved cities when a better opportunity appeared, while you were free. The down payment alone, invested, generates more than $1 million over the same period most people are paying off a mortgage. That's before you account for the difference between your rent payment and what you would have paid as a homeowner. A difference that in many markets you could also invest. This is where the psychology gets interesting because most people, when they hear these numbers, feel a deep discomfort and almost physical resistance. And that resistance is worth examining because it tells you something important about why the conventional narrative is so powerful. The human brain is wired for tangibility, for things it can touch. A house is something you can stand inside. You can paint the walls. You can say, "This is mine." The $84,000 sitting in an index fund is just a number on a screen. It doesn't feel real in the same way. It doesn't feel like yours in the same way. And this psychological gap between what is tangible and what is real is one of the most expensive biases most people never correct. There's a name for this in behavioral economics. It's called the endowment effect. We overvalue things we own, things we can touch, things we can see, simply because we own them. A house activates this bias at the deepest possible level. It is the most emotionally charged financial asset most people will ever own. And that emotional charge is precisely what makes it so difficult to evaluate clearly. The financial services industry understands this. Banks don't sell you mortgages. They sell you homeownership. They sell you the dream, the yard, the permanence, the identity. The mortgage is just the mechanism. The actual product is the emotion. And you pay for that emotion for 30 years. Here's the first rule that changes how you see this. A house is not an investment. It is a leveraged consumption asset with an illiquid exit. What does that mean? It means a house gives you a place to live. That is consumption. It is financed with debt. That is leverage. And when you need to access the value stored inside it, you cannot do so quickly, cheaply, or without significant friction. That is illiquid. Compare that to an index fund. You can sell it tomorrow. You can sell $5,000 of it while keeping the rest. You can rebalance. You can respond to your life changing. A house gives you none of that flexibility. And flexibility, when you are young, is not a luxury. It is one of the most valuable financial assets you possess. The 28-year-old who buys a house in Dallas, Texas, is making a bet that in 30 years they will still want to live in Dallas, Texas, or at least that they will be able to sell easily when they don't. But life does not work on 30-year fixed timelines. Careers shift, industries relocate, relationships change, health changes. The opportunities of the next decade will not appear on the same map you're standing on today. The renter can follow the opportunity. The homeowner negotiates with the market. Now, this is the part of the conversation where someone always says, but home values always go up. Real estate always appreciates. Let's look at that claim with actual numbers. The Case-Shiller Home Price Index, which tracks inflation-adjusted U.S. home prices since 1890, shows that real home price appreciation after adjusting for inflation has averaged approximately 0.5% to 1% per year over more than a century. Not 7%, not 10%, 0.5% to 1% annually in real terms. Your home is not growing your wealth at the rate you think it is. It is largely keeping pace with inflation. Meanwhile, the $84,000 you locked into the down payment, had it been invested in the S&P 500, would have been growing at 10% annually in nominal terms, roughly 7% in real terms. The gap between those two numbers, 0.7% versus 7%, compounded over 30 years, is not a small gap. It is a chasm. The wealth you feel when your $420,000 home becomes a $700,000 home over 20 years is real in nominal terms. But after accounting for what you paid in mortgage interest, often equal to or greater than the original purchase price, after accounting for maintenance, taxes, insurance, and the opportunity cost of the down payment, the actual financial return is frequently far lower than it appears on paper. This is not a secret. It is math. It is just math that nobody presents to you in full before you sign. There's a specific moment that happens to a lot of homeowners. It usually comes somewhere around year 7 or 8. They open a spreadsheet, maybe for the first time since they bought, and they look at what they've actually paid versus what equity they've actually built. And the numbers don't match the feeling. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the amortization schedule front loads interest heavily in the early years. In the first year of a 30-year mortgage, approximately 80% of each payment goes to interest, not principal. You are, for the first several years, paying the bank an enormous amount of money to borrow an enormous amount of money, and your actual ownership stake grows slowly, sometimes invisibly. That spreadsheet moment is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It is just a number on a screen at midnight, and the uncomfortable realization that the asset you were told was building your wealth has been building your bank's wealth far more efficiently than it has been building yours. The shift. This is where the conversation changes. The question was never really rent or buy. That framing was always too simple. The real question is, what do I want my capital to do? And more specifically, what does my capital do for me when it is locked inside a physical asset versus when it is liquid and deployed? Capital that is locked in a house gives you stability, identity, and a place to live. Those are real things. They are worth something. For some people, at some stages of life, they are worth a great deal. But capital that is deployed, invested, compounding, flexible, does something different. It works while you sleep. It is not attached to one city, one roof, one interest rate. It can be directed toward your highest opportunity moments. It gives you the freedom to say yes to things most people cannot say yes to, and the freedom to say no to things most people cannot say no to. There is a version of financial freedom that looks like a paid-off house. There's another version that looks like $1.5 million in liquid assets at age 58. These are not the same version, and they do not feel the same, and they do not offer the same options. And most people, because they were never shown the math, never got to choose consciously between them. None of this means buying a house is always wrong. It isn't. There are specific conditions, specific markets, specific stages of life, specific financial situations where buying a home makes clear strategic sense. If you plan to stay in one place for more than 10 years, if the price to rent ratio in your market favors ownership, if you have significant excess capital after the down payment, if homeownership contributes meaningfully to your stability and therefore your productivity, these are real factors. But those conditions should be evaluated with real numbers in your specific market at your specific moment against your specific alternatives, not accepted as a universal truth handed down from a generation that bought homes when median prices were 3 times median income, not 5, not 6, not 8 times median income, as they are in many cities today. The financial world your parents navigated was not the financial world you are navigating. The rules they followed were not wrong for them. They may simply not apply to you. Here's the second rule. The most expensive financial decisions are the ones made from identity, not analysis. Buying a house because you believe that's what adults do. That's what responsible people do. That's what proves you've made it. That is an identity decision, not a financial decision. And identity decisions are made with emotion, which means they are almost never made with full information. The families who build real wealth across generations are not the ones who followed the conventional script most faithfully. They are the ones who paused long enough to ask why and were willing to accept an uncomfortable answer. You are sitting somewhere right now reading this or listening to this, and some part of you is resistant. That resistance is normal. It is the product of years of narrative, of what you've been told success looks like, of what your parents achieved and were proud of and want for you. But somewhere underneath that resistance, there is a quieter question. Is this the best use of what I have? Not the most comfortable use, not the most socially legible use, the best use. That question doesn't have a universal answer. It has your answer, specific to your life, your market, your timeline, your priorities. And the only way to find your answer is to look at the numbers with clear eyes, without the mythology, without the emotion, without the weight of what everyone else expects. The house may still be the right choice for you, but it should be a choice, made consciously, made with full information, made because you looked at the math and decided the trade-off was worth it, not because you were told it was the only road that leads somewhere real. Most people never get to make that choice. They drift into it, and some of them years later in a quiet moment at a spreadsheet wonder what would have happened if they had stopped just once and done the math first. You're doing the math now. That already puts you somewhere different.